The major part of the electric car is the body. To create that body, we're going to be using some tools or commands that perhaps you haven't used all that often, such as extruding surfaces, trim, thicken, and split. And you can also see there's quite a large number of features involved in modeling the car body. To start the process, I've created a very simple sketch of what the size of people might look like inside the car. Around those stick figures, what I've done is I've created an extruded surface. So instead of creating a solid, I created a zero thickness body or surface. Let's have a look at how I did that. Using the figures as a guide, I created a body or shape around those figures. Having done that, I then extruded that sketch. But in this case, I extruded it by creating a surface. Typically, you would create a solid, but in this case, I selected the output as a surface and a distance of 48 inches, since I'm using inches in this particular project. Metric datasets are also available. With the outside profile created, I want to create a more aerodynamic shape of the car. I'm going to kind of repeat the process that I just used. This time I created a work plane, created two sketches using the spline command, making sure they were slightly longer than the original car, and again created extruded surfaces. I now have three surfaces in my model, and what I'm going to do is use the trim surface command to create that nice aerodynamic shape. Here you can see those trims, and that's the trim surface command. So what I've modeled so far are three surfaces, but they have zero thickness. So what I want to do is give them some thickness. And I do that by using the thicken command. It's a little bit like the shell command that you're probably more familiar with. In this case, what I've done is I selected the three surfaces individually using the thicken command, and I gave them a specified thickness. And here we see that. I gave them a thickness of 0.25 inches. And I'm showing you the process for that first or larger surface that I created. That's now a hollow shape, although it's not quite as obvious. With the body now created and with some thickness, what I want to do is start to add a series of extrusions. This is for the front pivot area. The next one is to create the opening for the doors, and now we can clearly see that this object is in fact hollow. I'm now thinking about creating the opening for the windshield. I started by creating a sketch above the car that was built off of a work plane. The sketch represents the opening, and we can see that in plan view. I then extruded that sketch to create a surface, which we've done before. And I then extruded, but this time I used the surface and the cut operation. I took that a distance of 38 inches, and that cut out the opening for the windshield, which we'll show you how to create in the next lesson. I'm now going to look at what's required for the rear suspension. For the most part, it's simply adding material and some holes for the axles and the springs to connect onto. So if we look at the material that I've added, I placed a hole through there, and then some additional extrusions so that it can be connected onto the body of the car. I'm now going to move to the front pivot area. This is where the steering wheel and that rack and pinion steering will be. Now at the moment you can see that that original extrusion was rather large, so I wanted to remove material and make it a little bit smoother. Similar workflow to what I've been doing. I created a sketch, extruded that sketch, and made a surface. Here you can see the spline command that I used to create the sketch. Extruded it to create the surface, and then used the split command. And here we see that split command on the Modify panel. When you use the split command, you select the cutting plane, which in this case was my extruded surface, and then a small arrow indicates the area to remove, so you can flip that arrow. In this case I want to remove the material on the outside. And then mirror some of the features to create a similar shape on the other side of the car. In addition, I added some openings so that the pivot can go through the car. At this point you can start to add fillets. It's generally good workflow to add the fillets as late in the process as you possibly can. We've just about completed modeling the car body, so I'm just adding some of the final features. For example, at the front of the car I need a support or a bracket for the pivot. And I'm also adding my fillets now. It's generally good practice to add the fillets as late as possible in the workflow. In your design, you'll have to determine how that front axle and steering mechanism is attached. In addition, you can see the additional fillets and some of the interior detail I've added to the car, including an area for the dash and where the steering wheel will be located.